Hello, Ian. How are you?
Hi, pretty good. Good to be here talking to you guys.
Nice to meet you. I'm Florian.
And I'm Julien.
And we are from Mamytwink, a French World of Warcraft and Blizzard website.
Mm-hmm.
So can you first introduce yourself to our community and explain what you do at Blizzard and what is your job in World of Warcraft?
Sure. My name is Ian Hazzikostas. I'm one of the lead game designers on the World of Warcraft team at Blizzard. And that makes me kind of a generalist. I work on all different parts of the game. In the past, I've had a lot of involvement with encounter design, and so I supervise the team that makes the dungeon and raid encounters for the game, but I'm also involved in a lot of other systems, items, balance, you name it, really.
Okay, thank you very much. So I will start with the first question about patch 6.1 and about the garrison and the player interaction. The new patch will bring players to visit each other's in the garrison through boss fights. This is really great because it brings more interaction in our garrison. Do you plan other mechanics like this to bring more interaction between players in garrison?
Exactly. In 6.0, in the launching game, we had things like garrison invasions, or maybe sometimes you would visit a friend's garrison to use their enchanting hut to disenchant some of your items. But we're looking to find more ways to give you a reason to visit your friend's garrison, to have your friends visit yours. So I think one of the main new things there is there's going to be a rotating cycle of garrison visitors over the course of the week that provide different quests. And there's a small group of different possibilities, but different garrisons may have different visitors on different days. So if you want to get one of those quests, you may visit your friend's garrison to pick it up instead, or announce to your guild, hey, I've got such and such NPC in my garrison who wants to come visit me. And then in the course of doing that, one of the rewards that you can unlock are these summoning stones that will let you summon a raid boss inside your garrison with a weekly lockout, just kind of like a standard world boss. And for that, you'll want to bring all your friends or use the group finder to make a large group, bring everyone to your garrison, summon and defeat the raid boss there.
Do we already know what the raid boss will bring to the players? Maybe loot, achievements?
Both, yes. So yeah, there are a number of different bosses that are themed around the different invasion kits that we already have, like the Shadow Council or the Gorin or the Primals, the Botani. And so depending on which item you have, that's the boss that you'll summon. There's a weekly chance at a decent piece of loot. I think it's close to normal mode raid quality, and of course achievements for completing all of them and for just the various participation.
Okay, and maybe some vanity loots like mounts or things like that?
I'm not sure if there are any mounts as part of the rotation, but I believe there are some flavor items available. I would have to check to be sure.
Okay, great, thank you.
My question is about a guild garrison. How about part of a garrison that is dedicated to the guild? Maybe this could improve the feeling of the player to be part of a community. Do you have ideas about it?
It's definitely an interesting idea. It's something we discussed a lot during the development of Warlords and the garrison feature. I think the obstacle that we usually run into is that, as is the case with a lot of guild systems, I think the question comes down to who owns the guild garrison, who makes the decisions about customizing it, about what features you build or what followers you use, whatever portion was guild driven. And I think very often that type of content turns into a lot of fun for the guild leader or the guild officers who are making those decisions. And for everyone else, it's just something else that's there that they don't really get to interact with or control as much. So we decided to really focus on the feeling and the story of customizing, of owning your own piece of land, of the story of you as a commander in Draenor, ultimately building and leading an army against the Iron Horde.
Okay, thank you.
Now about patch 6.1. The patch doesn't really implement a new big content such as a new dungeon, new questing zone or new raid. Do you plan to bring such new content in future patches in Warlords of Draenor?
Yes, of course. I think we still have a lot of content that players are working their way through. Of course, we have the Foundry raid that just opened up a week and a half ago. Really, the 6.1 patch is introducing a number of features that we're excited about, like the heirloom system, like, of course, the Blood Elf models for Horde that they've been waiting on for a while, as well as a variety of content that gives you a way of interacting with the world that's already there in a new way, getting some new rewards, and maybe going back and revisiting some things that you haven't been to in a while. But of course, we are hard at work on much more sizable, proper content patches that will be coming in the future.
Okay, thank you.
Now I'll be talking about music. In patch 6.1, players will be able to change the music in their garrison through a jukebox. Will there be different possibilities to get them? Like, for example, killing a boss will give you a new music, do an older raid, or an event in chests. I don't know. Will this be a single loot, or will this be group loot, for example?
Honestly, I'm not 100% sure when it comes to each of the individual music tracks that you can collect, but I know that there's a wide variety of ways of obtaining them, and some of them are going to be relatively straightforward and easy to get. Some will be much rarer or harder to get, and collecting them all is going to be a challenge for people who want to, be completionists.
So we can imagine like more epic musics, legendary musics, and more common musics.
Well, I mean, not necessarily in 6.1, but I mean, I think it's laying the groundwork for that type of thing in the future if we decide to do it.
Okay.
Okay, and now about Twitter in World of Warcraft, some surprising new functionality. The fact to bring Twitter in Azeroth, is it a recent idea you got, or were you thinking about it since a long time? And how did you come to this idea?
I mean, I think we know that a lot of our players use social media, and whether it's posting on forums, whether it's using Facebook, Twitter, or other applications, just to kind of keep in touch with some of their online friends, to share screenshots, to talk about what boss they killed, tonight, or what item of loot they got. And so it's something we've been thinking about for a while. We're happy to finally be able to do it and integrate it. I think we see it as a convenience for players who already use Twitter. I mean, our goal isn't necessarily to get people who don't care about Twitter or who don't like Twitter into it. Really, it's totally up to you. It's totally up to the player. If you don't go into the interface menu and attach a Twitter account to your WoW account, you won't even notice that anything has changed. But for the person who likes using Twitter and already does so, this should make things a lot more convenient and provide some fun new ways of sharing things directly from the game with your friends.
Okay.
Now let's talk about raids in Warlords. So Blackrock Foundry recently opened. My question is, are you happy with the current state of raiding in Warlords of Draenor?
Overall, very happy, I think. Really happy with the reception that Foundry has seen in the first week and a half. I think one of the things that I like the most about the Foundry as a raid, as a concept, is just the environment itself. I think I've seen a number of players commenting, and I couldn't agree more, that it feels like a real place. It doesn't feel like a place that was built to be a raid in a video game. It feels like this giant, factory with, metal being processed and weapons being forged, and you're going in there just to wreck it and smash everything up to stop the Iron Horde, and that's kind of cool. And then the environment itself is very integrated into the encounters themselves, whether it's, Hans and Franz and their stamping presses, or trains on Operator Thogar, or, Blackhand destroying the Foundry itself around you. Obviously, we're also keeping a close eye on tuning. I think there some of the introductory fights on normal mode in particular may be a little bit too challenging for people who are just coming in from normal high mall. So we're making some tweaks there. But overall, really happy with the difficulty progression. We're looking closely at guilds this week that are working their way through Mythic and facing the challenges there. But it's been a lot of fun.
And aren't you afraid that patch 6.1 will change the tuning of the classes and bring maybe too much change to the current state of raiding?
I don't think so. I think most of our changes in patch 6.1 are buffs to classes that maybe your specs that are a little bit weaker, or in particular talents that aren't really used very much because they're underpowered. So I mean, our goal isn't really to drastically shake things up so much as give people more interesting choices and maybe make them take a second look at some talent rows that they haven't really thought about in a while, because there are more options available to them. So that should only help guilds that are still progressing and still working their way through bosses on whatever difficulty they're doing.
So the mythic progress shouldn't be shaken up with the patch.
It depends on timing, depends on on where guilds happen to be in the progress at the time. But I don't think we see the patch as something that's going to be very disruptive, regardless of when it lands.
Okay.
Okay, and now about raids, we already know the next probable raid will be set in Tannan Jungle. Players will fight against Grommash, Hellscream and Iron Horde. But we have seen through the crest that the Legion was a threat in Draenor, to the crest in Talador. Will we fight them in an upcoming patch?
Possibly. I mean, I think that's something the players are going to have to wait and see. We have some exciting surprises. We have some exciting stories in store that we're working on for 6.2. I think a lot of the information is laid out there for you in the quest so far, and it will be told even further in some of the quest lines in 6.1, the continuation of the legendary quest line in particular. So I look forward to players getting a chance to see it.
Okay, so we are waiting for these big surprises.
Okay, my question is a bit more personal. So, what is your personal favorite feature in patch 6.1?
Personally, I think just the heirloom system. Getting the heirlooms out of my bag, out of my banks, having them easily accessible on multiple characters. I think it's something we've been wanting to do for a while. It is a little bit different than the toy box because the toy box is more about just, spells that you can cast from anywhere. Whereas these are items that have power that you're creating, that you're doing things with, that you're upgrading. So there's a bit of extra work that had to go into the system to get it to be the way we wanted to. But I think particularly now that the expansion's been out for a few months, a lot of people are turning their attention to alts or to other characters they may want to level up and play as well. And so we think this is coming at a great time to make that as convenient as possible.
Okay.
We saw that you were bringing a new neck as heirloom, and maybe you plan to bring other pieces as heirloom items.
Potentially, yeah. And I think we're always looking at, and where it makes sense, adding new heirloom items or new slots even. I think the only thing that we're a bit cautious about is we never want to get to a point where you can have an heirloom every single slot of your gear from head to toe, because at that point, playing with those heirlooms, you just never get any gear upgrades at all. You never get the feeling of a quest reward that you care about, or any upgrades all the way to max level. So I think while heirlooms are a cool advantage, it's nice to have something that you work for be able to help you level an alt. We don't want it to completely replace any desire for items while you're leveling.
Okay, and we also saw you were bringing a new mount for players that have a lot of heirlooms. Can you just tell us a bit more about this mount? I think we can use it at level 1, if I'm not false.
That's correct. It's just a regular mount. The sort of the gimmick there in the explanation is that, well, you don't know how to drive a mount yet until level 20, so you're not the one driving. There's someone else driving you around, but you control it. It moves at regular land mount speed, and it's just another fun little advantage for any fresh characters you make if you're someone who's collected all the heirlooms, or lots of them.
Okay, and now coming back to Garrison, you tweeted on the Warcraft devs account that the Garrison campaign won't continue in patch 6.1, but in patch 6.2. What is the reason behind this?
I mean, ultimately, the Garrison campaign itself leads up to setting the stage for the direct invasion of Tannan Jungle. And there isn't really much more story to tell. There are plenty of players who are still working their way through the Garrison campaign. Obviously, players who reached max level early on and who did the campaign quests every single week the whole way through have finished at this point, and they're waiting for the next step. But this is giving other players a chance to catch up. But also, really, the story just isn't, we're not ready to kind of advance the story yet. There are some new storytelling aspects in the legendary quest line and other world content that we're adding, but the Garrison chapters will have to wait until 6.2.
So 6.2 we will be learning more about Tannan Jungle.
Yes.
Okay, cool. Thank you.
Some players were surprised to see no new reputation in patch 6.1. I wanted to know if this was intended, and do you have plans to bring new reputations in the game in upcoming patches like 6.2?
Yeah, I mean, I think where it makes sense to add a new reputation, where we have something that we want to offer, some set of cosmetic rewards, or we're introducing a new faction, a new group of allies that you're working with, we'll certainly consider adding and will add a reputation if it makes sense. There isn't really any group that fit in cleanly and neatly like that in 6.1, but it wouldn't surprise me at all to see something new added in 6.2, and then certainly in content beyond that.
Yeah.
Okay, so coming back to rares, we have seen new items, the runes that are used to buff players in rares. Those are really essential, especially for players that are in mythic rares. And for the moment, access to those runes is really limited. We know that in patch 6.1 we will be able to find some of the runes through garrison missions, but do you plan to have other ways to get them? Because player thinks it's maybe too difficult for smaller guilds to farm them.
So, I mean, it's a discussion that I've followed very closely and with a lot of interest. I think it's interesting to hear the runes, the augments described as essential, when in reality, they're roughly a 1% damage increase when you use them. The majority of even the very, very best guilds in the world aren't using them regularly. They're something that you save for when a kill is really, really close. And you know that you might, if you're wiping at 1% on a boss, or you just need that little bit of extra DPS, it's a way of, kind of spending extra, going that extra length to get every advantage possible. But it's not something that anyone is really expected to use on every pull. And things are balanced accordingly. I think at the same time, it's, they're limited. The intent is that they're something that drives player economy. The guilds that feel like they need them most, probably mythic rating guilds that are doing progression, where they sort of have a hardcore mentality, where if there's anything that you can do that will give you an advantage, you have to do it. Well, those are the same guilds that are the ones often selling runs for tens of thousands of gold, selling mounts, selling achievements, selling the BOEs that they get. I think it's not necessarily a player responsibility. That's the sort of thing that a guild bank can be doing. Guild banks can take those tens of thousands of gold that they have and turn them into runes to be used for progression. The flip side is that by having the runes be available through Raid Finder, it makes the Raid Finder experience just a bit more lucrative in terms of how much gold it gives you, even if you're not winning items for the players who are doing that, without inflating the economy, without adding tons and tons of new gold into the system. I think this sort of interplay, it goes all the way back to the very beginning of World of Warcraft, where high-end raiding guilds would pay a lot of gold to sort of the player base at large to get consumables, to get various types of items, and then in turn they would sell BOEs and other epics back to those players, and the gold just cycles back and forth. And this is, I think, just another way of doing that.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. My question is about flying in Draenor. Since the beginning of the expansion, people can't fly in Draenor. Looks like it won't change in patch 6.1. I wanted to know, what is your opinion about this? Are you happy about the current state of the game? And if one day player will be able to fly in Draenor during the expansion?
So yeah, I mean, overall, I think we're satisfied with the decision. I think if we could, go back in time 6 months, we would still make the same decision again, seeing how it's played out. I think the world feels larger, it feels more dangerous. At the same time, we recognize that it's important for travel on a large scale to remain convenient. We have improvements to how flight paths are going to work in 6.1, where even if you are missing interconnecting flight path nodes, you'll always be able to fly through them and take the most direct route from the start to your destination, instead of having some of those silly, flight paths where you went in a giant circle just to go a short distance. So that shouldn't happen anymore. But the change has always been centered around the actual combat gameplay in areas, in having quests and having places where when we ask you to free a prisoner, you have to fight through the enemy camp to get to the cage to unlock the prisoner and free them, not just fly over the walls, land on top of the cage, click it, and fly away. And in that sense, I think we're satisfied. Certainly other things like hidden treasures, hidden, bonus opponents that you can find, all of those, and figuring out how to get to them only works because there's no flying. The reason why we didn't extend flying, or why we didn't add flying in 6.1, is that ultimately all of those reasons for not having flying in 6.0 still remain. It's where the active outdoor combat content is occurring. And so while the content remains in that place, I think not having flying makes sense, in much the same way that we didn't allow flying on Isle of Thunder or on Timeless Isle, and instead built those areas as outdoor gameplay spaces around ground movement and exploration. I know at this point there's some skepticism on the part of players where, you know, we've been saying like we honestly don't know, we're still thinking about it, we're still deciding, and there are players who just assume that, you know, oh, Blizzard decided a year ago they're never going to allow flying again, and they're just lying. You know, they're just saying, oh, you know, we're still thinking about it, we're still making up our minds. Honestly, we are. Honestly, you know, the plan I think coming into this has been, we figured we would not do flying in 6.0. And we would turn it on when we had our first batch of patch content that had, you know, a new place to explore. And I think that's still something that we're exploring. It's still something we're genuinely undecided about. There are different opinions internally. It's something we talk about regularly. And honestly, we'll see. If we decide that we're not going to do flying, we will let you know. We will say straight up and outright, there won't be flying in Draenor. If we decide that we are going to do it, we will also let you know.
Okay.
The goal isn't to keep people in the dark. We're just, you know, exploring how it plays, listening to feedback, and looking at the content that we're making and deciding as we go.
Okay.
So we could imagine to have in patch 6.2 like no flying in Tannan jungle, but maybe flying in the other zones of Draenor.
Something like that is certainly a possibility, yes.
Okay, in patch 6.1 you are also bringing new graphic options. And we saw yesterday
Yes.
official post about it. Are you constantly trying over the years to improve the graphic of World of Warcraft? Because the game is now 10 years old, and do you have maybe other plans for the future or the change to come?
Yeah, I mean, that's something that we're always doing, both on the side of just our art, of course, looking at, you know, the new player models and the work that went into that on the part of our artists, but also the game engine itself. And I think if you know, even though the game has been out for 10 years, if you look back and compare screenshots from 2004, 2005, side by side with the game today, it's almost like a different game. Everything from the water to the lighting to shadows to sun rays to everything else. So every new expansion, we're looking to, you know, improve our graphical capabilities, add features that will take advantage of new graphics hardware, new computer hardware that's out there in general. But at the same time, we want to make sure that the game remains playable, remains accessible for a wide variety of, you know, levels of computing power. That's something that Blizzard games have always, you know, prided themselves on. We don't want you to be unable to play our game without upgrading your computer just because a new expansion came out. But we're always trying to make things look better.
Okay, great.
Okay, and now about the models. I saw that recently there was an update of Night Elves model, like the movement when they were walking. Are you happy with the new models at the moment, and are you going to change other things to the models, like the Night Elves?
I mean, yes, I think overall we're happy. I think that in 6.1 it gave us a chance to polish up some things, to make some tweaks and small adjustments in response to player feedback. I think when we rolled out the new character models, we knew that it was going to be extremely controversial. Like, it was an exciting change, it was an awesome change, but when you're changing the look of a character that someone has played for years, you know, there's a lot of conflicting opinions, a lot of, you know, it's very subjective. And so we kind of listened very closely to that, filtered through the opinions, and focused on some issues that we wanted to try to target to improve in 6.1. Things like subtle animations, facial expressions, things along those lines. We don't see it as a completely finished project or a completely finished work, though. It's something that we're going to continue to pay attention to and tweak and improve as time goes on.
Okay, and now more PvP content. One thing on Asheron, sometimes the queues are really long. Personally, I can experience it because I'm a big PvP player, and sometimes it's really long, and I read you were trying to fix it in patch 6.1. How will you do it? Maybe...
Yeah, so I think I mean, we have some changes that we're very hopeful about in 6.1. I think the main change is shifting the way the matchmaking works on a much more fundamental level, from matching up servers against each other or matching up pairs of servers against each other to, you know, a larger, more region-based approach, which should let us average out Alliance versus Horde populations better and shorten queue times all around. I think, you know, we've been adjusting the pairings of servers as much as we can over time manually to try to improve queue times. but often it's very difficult to get the ratios right to keep the queues acceptable. And we know that right now in many places and many servers, they're unacceptably long. And so it's something that we're really hopeful we'll be able to fix in 6.1.
Okay, and do you have other new stuff for PvP in 6.1? Oh.
I believe so, but honestly, I'm blanking on it off the top of my head right now.
Yeah.
Just haven't had a chance to think about it in a little bit.
Okay, no problem.
Okay.
Let's go. So I think we are good for all the questions. It was really a pleasure for us to have this opportunity to chat with you, to ask your questions, and really thank you for your answers.
Thank you very much.
My pleasure. Great talking to you guys.
Okay, so hope to see you soon again, and
Yeah, me too.
good luck for bringing patch 6.1 out.
All right, thanks. Take care, guys. Have a good night.
Thank you. Bye bye.